Hello everyone, welcome in today to the Coach KJ Carousel Dynasty. This week we're going through our complete offseason for the 2015 offseason. We're going to start off by just going through and showing off some of the coaches that changed teams. We got offered the job at Iowa State, but we decided of course to stay with Florida. So Iowa State goes a different direction and they hire Manny Diaz from UNLV. Next up is Cal. You got South Carolina. We're trying to go through this quick. I'm not going to talk about every coach, so we're going to take this time while we're showing off all the new coach hires, and I just want to talk about a little bit about the direction of our team going forward and what I'd like to see. Coming into this offseason, I do think that we have quite a few people that could actually end up entering the draft, so I think we need to make sure that all of our young freshman recruits come in and get playing time. I don't plan on redshirting too many just because I don't want to lose many. I think we need some depth built up across this team. Now, I will say that at quarterback, that's of course going to be an area where I don't expect us to be able to play a whole lot of backups, so we might have to deal with some people leaving at that position. It's okay though, you need to recruit a quarterback every year in my opinion. And then at halfback, we have Quantel Johnson returning, then we have Gayassi Blanks coming in, and we also have Denzel Hudson coming back as well. He's a slower guy who's more of a power back, but he might get some playing time this next season. And then at receiver, it all depends on who goes pro and who stays. I'm a little worried we could lose Harrison Walls III or Malik Mega or even Emmanuel Henderson. He's a pretty good overall as well. Now, I do know we're losing Xavier Henderson to the draft, so that's a position that could be a little bit in flux. And then at tight end, we are losing Noah Keeter to the draft, but we have somebody who's capable coming in to replace him in Kyle Hinder. Now let's get into who's leaving and who's going. Jordan Young's declaring for the draft early. I'm not that surprised. He's a 90 overall corner. Cameron Waits is leaving. That one hurts us. We don't really have a good left tackle coming in. That's an issue for us across the O-line. Tyreek Sapp also declared for the draft, along with Devin Moore. Boy, this is a lot of people leaving early. Kamari Wilson, and then I already told you about Trevor Etienne. He did end up at just entering the draft. And then BJ Bradley King transferred to FSU. That's a rivalry that you don't like to see your players cross, so we're definitely going to be playing him later. Amari Curry transferred away to BYU. Tanner Bailey, it says South Carolina, our third string quarterback. He transferred to UAB, and then Major Hodge transferred to UTEP. And then we lost Jake Slaughter, who was a good backup for us that we didn't play as much as we should have. He went to Mississippi State, and then Marcus Burke transferred to USF. And then Harrison Walls III thought about going pro, but luckily for us, he came back. Derek Wingo is expected to be drafted along with Xavier Henderson. Of course, Richie Leonard, no, he's not very good. Noah Keeter, I'm surprised they don't have him getting drafted. He was really effective for us, and he is an 87 overall, and he's 6'5", 230, so I really think he should end up getting drafted. Jason Marshall, no. Ethan Pouncey, I'm not surprised by. Now, Jeremy Crawshaw, our punter, I'm a little shocked they don't think he can get drafted. And then Montrell Johnson at an 88. Somehow we had ETN make the list, but not Montrell Johnson. Kyle Engel, of course, they don't expect to get drafted. Antoine Powell-Ryland, even with his good season, he's still only a 78 overall. And then Jalen Kimber, he is possibly like an undrafted guy just because of his return ability. And then Desmond Watson's another guy that I would love to see get into the league, but he's so big that it might actually be a negative. And then we have corner Avery Helm. He didn't really do much for us, so I'm not surprised they don't expect him to get drafted. Now we're just going to look around and see who's transferring and who's declaring early from around the league. Now, a lot of these players are real, so right now, it's not as important as in the future when I'm creating draft classes from this dynasty file, but I do want to show transfers so that way in the future when I am creating the draft classes, you can see if a player did transfer by looking back, and I'll be able to give that as a little bit of his bio in the background. Now, looking at some of the running backs that decided to declare early, Nick Singleton left. I'm not surprised. He was amazing at Penn State. And then some players that could make an impact who are transferring. Milano's one at running back. At receiver, you have Shaq Britt going to Charlotte. He's a 77 overall. You got Sebastian Duck leaving Penn State and going to Toledo. Tight end, Jaleel Skinner, who did well against us in the bowl game, declared early. The only transfer of note was BJ Bradley King, like I said, going to FSU. I'm really not happy about that one. And then at the left tackle position, I don't see anybody that's a big impact transfer. They might get playing time at their new schools, but I don't see them being studs. Now at left guard, there's Brunskill, who's expected to go to North Texas. He could make an impact with his overall being at a 77. As center, there's really no important transfers here, so this should be a pretty easy position. And then at right guard, once again, there's some good transfers, but nobody really good. Now taking a look at some right tackles, honestly, we have some decent ones with Sim and Tui Pelotu. We'll have to see if they can make an impact in the future. Taking a look at left end, really, Hodge was the only transfer that I think is a big impact guy, and he's not going to make it to the league, I would say. And then at right end, there's a big one in Craig Rogers leaving Alabama, going to Fresno State. He can make a big impact in the future. And then looking at D tackles, Jared Borland going from Ohio State to Minnesota could be a huge transfer at D tackle. And then you also have Anderson, who's another one, going from BYU to Maryland. Now looking at left outside linebacker, I can see Martin going to FAU making a bit of an impact. Up to middle, maybe Terhune going to Memphis could make a bit of an impact. I mean, he's a decent overall in the 70s. Now at right outside linebacker, there's nobody in the 70s. Somebody might be able to sneak their way into the draft, but I'm not as confident there. And we had a lot of people declare early at corner. It's not that big of a shock. It's a skill position. People don't age as well there, so if they're good enough to go pro, they ought to go pro. So I mean, it's not shocking that a bunch of people went pro. And then we have some good transfers like Graham going to Charlotte and Edwards going to Hawaii. Could be another pretty good transfer. Now looking at free safeties, I can see Latos going to JMU being a pretty good transfer, along with Tankersley also going to JMU. We'll have to see if James Madison can play in both and may have them both make an impact for him. At strong safety, we had some people declare early, but transfer wise wasn't very good. And then kicker and punter wasn't very good. So now you can look and see where everybody got drafted that was from our team, and you can see Crawshaw did end up getting drafted in the 7th round. So that's good. I'm glad to see he got picked. Now in the future, I probably won't show this screen just because it doesn't really matter, honestly, at the end of the day. Now we're going to take a look though at our recruiting class because we already have it filled out, and unfortunately we came into the offseason with all 25 players already committed to our team. So I'm just showing off everybody that we already have committed because I already went through them in the early signing day. So that made the offseason a little bit less dramatic because, well, nobody was able to commit. We already had a full recruiting class, and with all the corners we lost, I'm very thankful that we have a strong corner class coming in just because our class is full, and if we didn't sign all these guys and then we lost all them corners, we'd be in a real rough spot. We're still going to be pretty young at the position, but I think we'll be okay. And we did end up holding on to the top spot, and we have the #1 class in the nation, followed by Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama, Florida State, Michigan, USC, Notre Dame, Washington, and Miami rounding out your top 10. Now I'm going to end up just showing off the top classes from around the nation, and that'll be just your top 25. I think that's the best way to go about it. And surprisingly, Rutgers made it into the top 25. I would not have guessed that. And LSU's all the way down at number 25. Now we're going to do some position changes, and as you've seen, we had Tyreek Sapp still show up on our team for some reason. I'm just going to cut him. We have no reason to keep him, so I'm going to cut him away from our team. He already announced his intention to go pro. I don't know what happened there, why he didn't end up leaving the team. Something weird must have happened there, but that's all right. At left tackle, you can see we are really weak right now. At center, we're also pretty weak, so we're going to end up probably moving right tackle Jake Park over to left tackle, so that way he can be our starter there. And then looking around, I think we're going to end up moving somebody in the center, and I think the one that makes the most sense is Brendan Redwine, just because he's a JUCO junior and he's not ever really going to play, and it gives him an opportunity to be a backup for us, and his overall doesn't really drop that much. And in fact, it actually goes up by 1, so that's a good move for his career. He'll never make it pro, but he can sit on the bench and play a little bit when we get games that are completely out of hand. Now we're going to jump ahead and just look at some of the players that I did move position for. Now at free safety, you can see we have a little bit of weakness, so I decided to go ahead and move Zoma Tobridge over. He's going to still be our 3rd free safety. He's not a great overall, but it's a good position for him to end up at. Now let's take a look at some of your upgrades and how much players progressed. We're going to start it off by going position by position. As you can see, Jack Barola only went up by 2. He's a 90. We had Quantel Johnson go up by 3. He's up to an 84. We'll take that. Fullback, not that worried about with Anthony Alexander. Receiver, we had some pretty good upgrades there. Emmanuel Henderson going up +5 is pretty big, along with David Hester going up by +5. Malik Mega ended up only going up by 1, but that's okay, we'll take it. Looking at tight end, Kyle Hinders up to an 82. He's going to be our starter this year, so I'm excited about that. Now at left tackle, left guard, we don't have a lot of strengths there. We're probably going to end up playing freshmen at both positions. Caleb Kirbyson, our center, went up by 4. At right guard, Josiah went up by 2. He's up to a 75. And at right tackle, Austin Barber's up to an 81 after a +4. Our O-line's definitely going to be a little bit weaker this year, so I'm not looking forward to that. We're going to have to get the ball out quick. Justice Boone went up by +6 to an 88 overall. That's amazing. I'm super happy about that, and I think that he's going to have a huge impact for us. Now, I'm really sad that Giovanni Peterson didn't develop at all. I was looking forward to developing him as a player, but that's one cool thing about this mod. Not everybody goes up. Tyreek Sapp shows up, but I'm going to cut him. Chris McClellan's looking pretty good. Shows Stuart McCaffrey. And then at left outside linebacker, to see Nathan Osborne Osborne not improve after playing last season really sucks. I was looking forward to trying to improve his career and develop him as well, so that's not looking too good for him. At corner, we really don't have anybody returning, but Clashawn Russell improved quite a bit. He's up to a 69 overall, but he's still not going to play really at all. Rashad Johnson's up to an 82. He's going to be our new starting free safety. At strong safety, Miguel Mitchell went up by 5. He's up to a 90. That's pretty awesome. We'll take that. At kicker, Mahalik went up by 3, so we'll take that. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at cut players, and I know Tyreek Sapp is going to be one of them players. He has to be. There's no way he can make our team, and you know, he already declared for the draft, so he's gone. And then we have one more player to cut, which surprised me, but I'm going to go ahead and cut Keith Britt. He's really never going to play for us. He's not a good quarterback, so we cut him off of the team. That gets us down to our 70 maximum players that we can have on our team. And from here, the next thing I'm going to do is show off our custom conferences. The SEC didn't change at all. This is the new Sun Belt, and as you can see, there's a little less teams in it. The ACC didn't change. If I could, I would adjust it, but there's no point in it. The American, this is going to be what your new look American looks like. Big 12, I added Utah, I added Colorado, I also added Arizona and Arizona State into this conference as well. So this is your new look Big 12. The Big 10, I couldn't make any adjustments to. I can't add Oregon and I can't add Washington, so they're going to stay in the Pac-12. This is the new look CUSA. There's only 9 teams left in it. La Tech remains the independent. In the MAC, there's no longer going to be a championship game. It just couldn't work out with the adjustments. The Mountain West Conference looks like that, and then your new look Pac-12 featuring Notre Dame, ECU, Northern Illinois, Tulane, Boise State, and San Diego State over there on the right side. And then in the other conference is all your teams that remain in the Pac-12, like Stanford and Cal and Washington and Oregon State and Washington State. Now I do know all except for Washington State and Oregon State have moved on to other conferences, so unfortunately I can't make it happen in this mod as much as I would like to. So this is the way I can best represent it and keep the Pac-12 alive. Now what's going to change going forward is instead of competing to move up to any conference, your teams from the group of 5 are going to compete to move up to the Pac-12. And if they can get and win a play-in game against the Pac-12 team, then they have a chance to move up to the Power 5, and we're going to go from there. Now, I will say, like, Oregon and Washington, they probably will never have to fight moving down again, just because they don't belong being in the Pac still, but there's a chance, technically, that they could have to, but I find that to be highly unlikely, and I don't think that'll ever be the case. Now, next thing we're going to do is look at our schedule. We're going to open up against La Tech, and then we're going to play Arkansas again this year, Tennessee again, Kentucky, LSU, Vanderbilt, Auburn, Georgia, North Texas, South Carolina, Alabama, and Florida State. That's a pretty solid schedule this year. I'm surprised we got both Arkansas and LSU again on our schedule. I didn't expect that from the West, but hey, we'll take it. I think we can beat Arkansas. Next thing we're going to do is look at Redshirts, and we're just going to scroll through and I'm going to show off the team so you can see the entire team as I'm doing this. Right now, I don't see anybody that I want to redshirt so far. Like I said, a lot of our freshmen, I am looking to try to get them on the field just because I don't want to see them transfer away. We need to develop depth across this O-line and across this entire team in particular. However, we are going to redshirt Darnell Cooper. He was a JUCO sophomore that came in. I think it makes a lot of sense to give him an extra year. Then we have him for 4 years. The next one I'm going to redshirt is Josh Stewart. He's a little bit lower on our depth chart. I don't expect him to play much, so I think it makes a lot of sense to redshirt him and let him develop since he's not going to get on the field at all. Now up the middle here, I thought about Daniel Cooper just because he was a JUCO sophomore, but instead I decided that I would redshirt Tyshawn Crosby. At corner, there's a few players here that I might end up redshirting just because we have so many young players coming in this year, and you know, with that many young players, they're not all going to get on the field. It makes sense to start trying to space them out a little bit, so that way in the future we're able to develop some of these young guys, get them on the field, and have them for an extra year. So we decided to redshirt our bottom 2 right now. Now at free safety, strong safety, and kicker, there's no redshirts. At punter, we decided to go ahead and redshirt Nick Ryder. I fully expect for him to end up transferring. I'm surprised that we got 2 punters in our class, but I think he'll end up transferring. Now let's take a look at our preseason Heisman standings. It starts with Ray Hobbs IV of USC, and then Jam Miller of Alabama, then Kyle McCord of Ohio State, Connor Wegman at Texas A&M, and Jalen Milroe, the quarterback at Alabama, is at number 5. That's a pretty interesting top 5, so I'm excited to see how it plays out. And then we're going to look at our preseason polls. Of course, Penn State opens up at number 1, followed by Ohio State, Alabama at 3, Oklahoma 4, North Notre Dame 5, 6 is Miami, 7's Texas A&M, 8's Washington, 9's Pittsburgh, 10's Oregon, 11's Utah, 12's Florida, 13's Iowa State, 14's USC, 15's North Carolina, 16's LSU, 17's Oklahoma State, 18's Michigan, 19's UCLA, 20's Oregon State, 21's Clemson, 22 is Syracuse, 23 is Mississippi State, 24 is Central Michigan, 25 is North Texas. Now we're just going to scroll through and I'm going to show off everybody else and where they start the season, just because I find it interesting and I think it's good for everybody to know. And it also gives us a reference point to go back to see how high some of these teams can climb. Like a Vanderbilt that's at 48, maybe they get hot this season and move all the way up. It's good to know that they started all the way down at 48 and maybe they get into the top 25. I don't think that'll happen, but it's a possibility, especially as we're looking at overalls here. Like Texas is really good and they start them off at number 64 this season. I don't see how they can finish that low. I fully expect Texas, even though they're in a tough SEC, to be able to move up and maybe even get into the top 25. Whenever you have an A overall, there's no way you should be that low, and I just don't see how they can sit that low and remain that low for the rest of the season. Now when you look at teams like Memphis, who are down here at number 83, who had a B- overall, and they're in the American, I think they're another team that could surprise and maybe move up in the rankings. Maybe they don't become a top 25 team, but being in the American at a B-, I think they're ranked a little bit low. And then we're getting close. I want to see who the worst team in the nation is. It's shocking to see Nebraska down here at 113, and Army at 120, and then when you get down here to the bottom, number 126 is Hawaii. That's really not that shocking. That's a program that's been struggling a lot lately. They need to get back on track, but they have some work to do. Now, as you can see, as we preview our La Tech matchup, we are the better team. We ought to be able to beat them. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. We need to get revenge after they upset us last year. That was an embarrassing defeat, and it still frustrates me that I lost that game. So this year, we're going to go in there and try to knock the doors off of them. I want to blow them out. We'll see if I'm able to do it, but it looks like overall our team's better than them. We may struggle in the SEC, but I think this is a matchup we can easily get. But I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Have a great day, and I'll be back with more Coach KJ Carousel Dynasty soon. Have a great day. I'm out.
And sometimes you just gotta believe there's something that'll give you relief. There's something that'll have what you need, what you need. We're broken, it's tragic, we're not all elastic, but maybe there's magic, believe you could have it.